everyone, this is Caly. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I'm creating a floral wreath card using this Just a Note Pansy set from my friend Emily Midget for Simon Says stamp. And what we're going to be doing is creating a fun background as well using a technique that I adapted from Yana Mascula. And you know, she creates beautiful abstract backgrounds. And I tried it for the first time on this video. So it looks nothing like hers, but I do love how soft and lovely it turns out. First things first, I'm going to stamp the image and color it with some simple combinations of Copic markers. Usually with flowers, we like to intensify and darken the colors at the center of the flowers, but for these pansies, I'm going to color darker from the outside in, and that way we get a little bit more interest and it really imitates more of what a pansy looks like color-wise in real life. For these flowers, I'm using RV10, RV11, RV13, and at the very center here, I'm using RV17. I always Google for inspiration, and I saw some pansies with darker centers like this and thought I would do the same just to give it a little bit more interest and pops of color. And then for the centers, I'm just going to add 2 shades of yellow. That's Y11 and Y15. And if you really want the combinations written down and an easy place to see everything instead of on this video, you can go ahead and refer to the blog for this particular video, and everything will be listed for your convenience. All of the supplies as well will be listed below for your convenience as well. So now I'm just going to go ahead and complete the rest of the pansies. These pansies are closed up, so there's not going to be a visible dark center to them. Again, I'm coloring the darker color on the outer edges and then working my way towards the center of the flower with a lighter pink. On the foliage, I'm using YG11, YG06, and YG09. The darker color is going to be concentrated at the bottom of each section of the foliage, and then I'll color into the light towards the top. Same with these little berry stems. You could color them a multitude of colors, blues, pinks, purples. I decided to keep them an olive color, so I've colored those quickly as well. And when I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and die cut my image. And then we've got these circle thin frames that I'm going to be using to create our wreath. I like to keep these frames together because they're kind of small, so it's easier just to die cut a bunch and then have a bunch of rings on hand for other projects. So I'm just choosing a ring here that's going to fit an A2 size panel, and I'm using the grid mat to help me determine the size. Once I've selected the proper ring size, I'm going to go ahead and set everything aside and work on our background. As mentioned earlier, I learned this technique from Yana Mascula, and this is actually my very first time. You see that orange in the top left-hand corner? I just tested a little bit of it to make sure that the ink would saturate into the glossy cardstock, and once it did, I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and wing it. So that's what I'm doing here. I did not test a panel beforehand, so this is the first time that I'm doing it and on this video to share with you. So Yana Mascula uses some specialty cardstock from Spellbinders, and I thought that maybe trying this white glossy cardstock would work just as well. And I don't know if it works just as well because I don't have the specialty paper from Spellbinders to compare to for Yana's technique, but I felt that it was going to work just fine using this white glossy cardstock, so I just went ahead and went with it. So what I'm doing is I'm applying some ink directly to the cardstock, and working quickly, you have to smudge and smear that ink into the cardstock. And it really saturates into the glossy paper, but doesn't ruin or take away the gloss, if that makes sense. On that second blob that I did, I actually applied some water to my fingers before smearing that ink. So if you want your ink to last a little bit longer and a little bit more time to work, you can always add a little bit of water as well. I'm using my magnetic media mat here for some easy application as well as easy cleanup. I'm able to pick up that ink on the glass using my fingers and apply it onto my cardstock just like I would with ink blending. For my background, I'm using some positively saturated inks. Other inks might work as well. You might have to work a little bit faster. The positively saturated inks are just really creamy and super easy to blend and work with. So it's a great medium to use for this technique. I do overlap the colors some, and as well as apply that orange melon color over the pink cheeky color that I did before. It creates a nice coral color and creates different shades compared to just the 3 that I'm going to be using. And if you want to create a more abstract look, you don't have to fill up your entire panel with color. Again, this is my very first time playing with this technique, so I just kept smearing and playing and ended up covering the entire panel, which is fine. It created a soft background for my wreath later on that I really thought was beautiful, and I'll definitely be trying this technique again in the future with different colors and trying the more abstract look like Yana does for her cards. And you're probably wondering, why not just ink blend a panel with the same colors? Well, from what I can tell, this really creates a softer look, and the smudging really creates this organic look. I also really love that the paper stays glossy, so you have this special interest and effect to your card that you wouldn't see with a regular ink blended panel. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working here, applying the ink and smudging it around with my fingers. And again, I'm overlapping the colors a little bit, and I end up covering the entire panel, which is totally fine. If you want it to be more abstract, leave lots of white in between the colors as well as at the center. And you know what else is really great about this positively saturated ink? It's not staining my fingers. The ink wipes right off of the glass as well as my fingers and is really not a messy project at all or a messy technique. And we all know that I'm mess adverse. So after I'm done with my panel, I do wipe it down just in case there's any excess ink at the top of the glossy paper. And you can't really tell, but the paper really is still glossy and there isn't any excess ink at the top of it, so wiping it down is not necessary. I'm just trimming down my panel now, cutting off 1/4 inch off all of the sides. That always cleans up the pooling of ink from blending, so I like to chop all that off and make everything nice and clean and crisp. And I'll go ahead and apply some liquid glue all the way around my ring to adhere that to my card panel, and I'll go ahead and use an acrylic block just to hold that down while I add some foam adhesive to my Just a Pansy floral image. You really can't go wrong with the placement of this image. You just need to make sure that you're okay with any overhang. If there is overhang, I try to limit that, so that's why I positioned it the way I did. Then using some dot tape runner, I'm going to go ahead and apply this panel to a card base. Then I'm going to go ahead and emboss a sentiment. I'm using the Just a Note sentiment. There are other sub-sentiments, but for this wreath, I thought just one sentiment strip would be plenty, and plus this one comes with a die, so that's always a bonus. So I've embossed my sentiment in white over some black cardstock, and I'll die cut that with the coordinating die before adhering that to my card. I'm using foam adhesive for the first portion of that sentiment, and then I'll use liquid adhesive so that it can attach itself to the floral image where it overlaps. I'm using my little T ruler here to help me line everything up, and then I'll go ahead and press that down and use the ruler to hold everything down for just a few seconds. And then finally, of course, I had to add a few iridescent sequins. I'm just going to go ahead and add some dots of glue where I want my sequins to be, and then I'll go ahead and attach the sequins in increasing size. I like my sequins to fan out from the sentiments, and then I go from a larger size to a smaller size. So that completes my card for today. I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope you learned something new, and I hope it inspires you to play with your positively saturated inks and create this colorful background using some white glossy paper. Thank you so much for stopping by, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye!